You stopped doing something you loved. You can't remember when. You can't remember why. There was no argument, no ultimatum, no moment where she said, "You're not allowed." But somehow, the man you were 5 years ago, the one who made decisions without hesitation, who had opinions he didn't apologize for, who moved through the world on his own terms, that man is gone, and you didn't even notice him leave. If you're watching this right now, subscribe to this channel, because what we break down here is the stuff no one else is willing to say out loud. Here's what happened to you. She didn't change you with words. She changed you with silence, with warmth, with withdrawal, with a system so subtle that you never saw it operating. And by the time you feel it, you've already been rebuilt from the inside out. This is how women psychologically reshape men without saying a single word. Before we get into the specific mechanisms, you need to understand something foundational. This is not about vilifying women. Most of what we're about to describe operates below conscious awareness, on both sides. She's not sitting in a dark room drawing diagrams of your psychological destruction. And you're not weak for being susceptible to it. What's actually happening is operant conditioning. The same principles psychologists have documented for over a century. Behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. Behavior that gets punished, even through something as subtle as emotional withdrawal, gets extinguished. You don't need a laboratory to run this experiment. You just need a relationship where one person's emotional state becomes the other person's operating system. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. The most effective conditioning doesn't feel like conditioning. It feels like love. It feels like growing together. It feels like compromise. The man being reshaped doesn't resist because he doesn't recognize there's anything to resist. He just wakes up one day and realizes he asks permission to do things that used to be automatic, and he calls that maturity. It's not maturity, it's compliance that learned to disguise itself. Here's something else most people miss. This process accelerates over time. In the first year, you're making small adjustments. You think of them as courtesy. By year 3, those adjustments have compounded into patterns. By year 5, the patterns have hardened into identity. You don't even experience them as concessions anymore. You experience them as who I am now. And that's the most dangerous stage, because a man who's been reshaped and knows it can push back, a man who's been reshaped and thinks it was his own idea, he'll defend the cage he's sitting in. Think about that. You won't just tolerate the new version of yourself, you'll argue for it. You'll tell your friends this is what growth looks like. You'll mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of peace. And anyone who points out what happened to you becomes the enemy, because they're threatening the story you need to believe. The first mechanism is the most powerful because it's the most invisible. Withdrawal of affection as behavioral correction. Here's how it works. You do something she doesn't like. Maybe you spent Saturday with your friends instead of running errands with her. Maybe you disagreed with her in front of other people. Maybe you made a decision about your own life without consulting her first. She doesn't yell, she doesn't argue, she just pulls back. The warmth drops by 2 degrees. The texts get shorter. The physical affection disappears. There's nothing to confront because nothing technically happened. If you asked her what's wrong, she'd say nothing, and she might even believe it. But your nervous system registered it. Your brain logged the sequence, action followed by coldness, and the next time that situation comes up, you hesitate, you check, you modify, not because you decided to, but because your body learned to avoid the withdrawal before your conscious mind even recognized the pattern. Now run that loop for 3 years, 5 years, a decade. Every time you assert independence, the temperature drops. Every time you comply, the warmth returns. You're not being controlled, you're being trained. And the leash is made of affection, which is why you never feel it around your neck. What makes this mechanism particularly devastating is that it hijacks your attachment system. Psychologists have identified that the fear of emotional abandonment activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. So when she withdraws warmth, your brain doesn't process it as she's being distant. It processes it as threat, danger. Fix this now, and the fastest way to fix it is to stop doing whatever triggered the withdrawal. Your survival instinct becomes her enforcement mechanism. You're not making a rational decision to comply. You're flinching, and flinching, repeated 1,000 times, becomes a permanent posture. The second mechanism works in tandem with the first. If withdrawal is the stick, micro-rewards are the carrot. And the carrot is what makes the whole system feel like a good relationship. She lights up when you wear what she picked out. She's more physically affectionate after you agree with her publicly. She praises you to her friends, but only for the behaviors that serve her preferences. You get enthusiasm when you cook her favorite meal. You get warmth when you cancel your plans to spend time with her family. You get intimacy when you perform the version of yourself that she's building. And it feels good. That's the entire point. The reward isn't a manipulation tactic she's running deliberately. It's a genuine expression of her satisfaction, which means it's completely authentic, which means you have no reason to question it. You just naturally do more of what generates that response. Over time, your identity starts orienting around her validation. The things that make her happy become the things you want to do. The preferences she rewards become your preferences. And the man you were before, the one with his own tastes, his own rhythms, his own internal compass, gets slowly overwritten by the man she responds to best. You didn't lose yourself. You were replaced, one micro-reward at a time. Here's where it gets truly insidious. The micro-reward system doesn't just reshape what you do, it reshapes what you want. Psychologists call this internalization, the point where external motivation becomes internal motivation. You stop wearing that shirt because she likes it and start wearing it because you like it, except you don't like it. You like the feeling that comes with her approval. But you can't tell the difference anymore because the wiring has been rerouted. Your desire and her preference have fused into something you experience as a single signal, and separating them again, figuring out which wants are actually yours, that's one of the hardest things a man in this position will ever have to do. The third mechanism is social pressure, but not the kind you'd recognize. She doesn't pressure you directly. She lets other people do it for her. My friend's husband takes her on a date every Friday. My mum thinks we should spend the holidays with them this year. Everyone at work says their partner handles the finances. Notice the structure. The demand isn't coming from her. It's coming from an external authority. Her friends, her family, society. She's just the messenger, which means if you push back, you're not disagreeing with her. You're disagreeing with everyone. You're the outlier. You're the one who's not meeting the standard. This reframes every negotiation. It's no longer a conversation between two people with equal standing. It's you versus an invisible consensus that she's reporting on. And most men fold. Not because the argument is compelling, but because fighting a crowd is exhausting. The result is that her preferences get installed as social norms. What she wants becomes what's normal. And what you want, if it conflicts, becomes what's selfish, immature, or out of touch. The fourth mechanism is the one you'll have the hardest time seeing because each individual instance is completely reasonable. Boundary creep through incremental asks. She doesn't ask you to give up your Saturday routine. She asks you to skip it once because she needs help with something. Totally reasonable. Then she asks again the following week because her parents are visiting. Of course. Then it becomes the default, and by the time you notice, there's no routine left to protect. Each concession is small, each ask makes sense in isolation, but the cumulative effect is a life that's been completely restructured around her needs without a single unreasonable demand ever being made. That's the architecture of it. No single brick is heavy, but the wall is 10 feet high and you built it yourself, one sure, no problem at a time. If you mapped your average week now against your average week 3 years ago, you'd see the drift. The hobbies that evaporated, the friendships that thinned, the time that got reassigned. Not taken, reassigned. Because you agreed to every individual transfer. You just never calculated the total. And here's the mechanism that locks it in place. Once enough boundaries have shifted, the new arrangement becomes the baseline. Now, if you try to reclaim Saturday mornings, you're not restoring something, you're taking something away. She doesn't experience it as you returning to your original life. She experiences it as you abandoning a commitment. The creep only moves in one direction because reversing it triggers conflict, and the whole system was built to avoid conflict in the first place. You're trapped by your own agreeableness. The same trait that made you a good partner made you an easy target. The fifth mechanism is the most ambient and the hardest to name. Her mood becomes the household thermostat, and your primary job, without anyone ever assigning it to you, becomes regulating that thermostat. When she's happy, the house feels safe. When she's upset, everything tightens. And over time, you stop asking, "What do I want to do today?" and start asking, "What kind of mood is she in?" Your decisions filter through her emotional state before they reach your own desires. This is environment control. She doesn't have to tell you what to do. She just has to be visibly displeased, and you'll adjust course on your own. You'll cancel the plans. You'll soften the opinion. You'll swallow the complaint, not because she demanded it, but because the cost of her displeasure became higher than the cost of your silence. And the final stage is when you start preemptating. You stop doing things that might upset her before she even reacts. You're no longer responding to her mood, you're predicting it. At that point, the conditioning is fully internalized. She doesn't need to do anything at all. You're managing yourself on her behalf. So how do you know if this is happening to you? Run these 5 checkpoints honestly. The permission test. Are there things you used to do freely that you now instinctively check with her before doing? The preference audit. Write down 5 things you genuinely enjoyed before this relationship. How many have quietly disappeared? Not because you lost interest, but because pursuing them became more trouble than it was worth. The mood scan. Before you decide what you're going to do today, do you assess her emotional state first? The voice test. When you disagree with her, do you say it directly? Or do you soften it, delay it, or swallow it? The friend mirror. Would your closest friend from 5 years ago recognize the man you've become? If those questions made you uncomfortable, that's not a bad sign. That's the first honest signal you've had in a long time. Now here's the part most channels won't give you. Seeing the pattern is not enough. Awareness without action just makes you a man who understands his own cage but still sits in it. So let's talk about what reclamation actually looks like. Because it's not what you think. It doesn't start with a confrontation. It doesn't start with blowing up your relationship. It starts with doing one thing this week that you want to do, without checking, without announcing, without gauging her mood first. Something small. Go to the gym at the time that works for you. Rewatch something you love that she has no interest in. Call a friend you haven't spoken to in months. Not to prove a point, just to see if you still can, without the internal alarm system going off. Because here's the truth. The conditioning doesn't break all at once. It breaks in micro acts of reclamation. Every time you make a choice based on what you actually want, and sit with the discomfort that follows instead of rushing to smooth it over, you're rewiring the loop. You're teaching your nervous system that independence doesn't equal danger, that her disapproval is not an emergency, that your preferences are not a threat to the relationship, and pay attention to what happens when you start. If you do something independently and she responds with warmth or neutrality, you might not be as deep in this as you thought. That's good information. But if you do something small and harmless for yourself and you're met with coldness, guilt, or emotional withdrawal, now you have your answer. Not from a YouTube video, from your own lived data. The goal here is not to become adversarial. It's not to start a war. It's to become a man who makes decisions from his own center of gravity again. A man whose first instinct is, what do I think, instead of, what will she feel? That's not selfish. That's the minimum requirement for being a man who's actually present in his own life, instead of performing in someone else's. You didn't lose yourself overnight. You won't get yourself back overnight either. But the man who starts reclaiming one decision at a time is already fundamentally different from the man who doesn't know he needs to. Now here's what I want you to answer in the comments. Which one of these 5 mechanisms do you think has had the biggest effect on you? And more importantly, what's the first thing you're going to reclaim this week? Drop it below. I read every comment. And if this opens something up for you, share it with one man who needs to hear it. Alpha Lens Mindset here. Thank you for watching. Stay sharp.